Welcome to Matters Financial, Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you as always for stopping by. I like this tweet from the Global Compact. Incremental change is not enough for the world we live in today. We need a revolution. This is Xenia_Tata. Just to remind you about this Saturday, we have Mindspeak with Jeremy Awori, the CEO of Barclays. I met with him yesterday. Reminded him that we'd met previously at Durham, which was quite a nice surprise. He's going to give us a big picture about Africa, about Barclays, lots of interesting things in his discussion. Macro thoughts from the weekend. I wrote the pound had found an off-ramp and rallied from just above 125 to the dollar to as high as 129. And that was a momentary high that day. Came off, but we're now back at 128.95. And what I was talking about was saying, it's found an off-ramp, rallied, closed out the week at 128.05. I recalled a meeting in Nairobi where I'd been laying out a bull case for the pound. I see an eventual return to 140 versus the dollar. And the gentleman in question had painted a dystopian future and talked of sub-parity versus the dollar. So allow me to start with the pound. Last week's price action was an important signal. I see May winning the snap general election by a mile, like Shargar did when he won the Epsom Derby. Respectfully, Jeremy Corbyn strikes me as a Neil Kinnock figure, and that Theresa May is going to parlay her party's 20-point plus lead over Labour into a huge majority. Political risk is not going away, but it's going to be about May. It's not going to be about May not having a mandate. That will mark a big shift. I also said there's a sizable short position in the pound. There were a lot of naysayers out there smelling a good old-fashioned sterling crisis in the air. Like that fellow I met in Nairobi, these short sellers are going to be well and truly burned, in my opinion. We're back at 128.97. Have a look at this chart from David Inglis. We popped through 129 momentarily a little bit earlier. Twitter surged pre-market yesterday. Company beat first quarter estimates. It ended up about 8 or 9%. And I think that's another interesting scenario. Because people have become very negative about it, and I think this numbers sort of justified a much more aggressive position. Putin says Russia will seek market tools to influence the ruble rate. This is from economics. You can see the currency moved immediately. Turkish lira jumped after the Turkey's central bank announced a surprise 50 basis point rate hike in the late liquidity lending rate from 11.75% to 12.25%. Home thoughts, Hannah, who is now 11, and I did take her sisters and her mother for a rather grand luncheon at the Connaught on her birthday. They got this very decorated chef, female chef actually. It was a great lunch. We tend to get a good deal at lunchtime. Is the proud owner of a night suit in the shape of a unicorn. And this morning on the way to drop her to a pickup at 6:05 a.m., my imagination started to race away. And I went back to the unicorn and said things like, "Darlings, don't unicorns fly? Let's just fly away and go somewhere remote and see the elephants and maybe look for some other unicorns." She puts on a very serious, grandmotherly face and tells me how she is school and exams are in 2 weeks and I should grow up and start thinking a bit more seriously about life. I like this, Sands of Time, Saharan Africa in the 1930s in pictures. Some of his landscape shots have an almost psychedelic quality, evoking an unfamiliar extreme of heat. Take a look at this one. And this is a fisherman in Lagos, Nigeria, when touring the country. Jindra also made close-up studies of spiders and documented rubber plantations and the Benin River. Political reflections. Trump has agreed not to pull out of NAFTA at this time, he told Trudeau in Pena Neto. So we saw quite a good recovery in those two FX rates. North Korea has accelerated its long-range missile development program and is expected further to test its nuclear capabilities. Let's see how that plays out. But certainly it looked a lot more imminent about a week ago, didn't it? Because we really did not know where we stood with Donald Trump. But I think, even he's not going to inflame the position from here. Venezuela's future won't be settled in the streets, as Bloomberg views. So far, Maduro has deployed only tear gas and mostly rubber bullets against protesters. Yet his recent decision to arm and mobilize a 500,000-strong citizen militia to prevent a coup points to the risks of greater violence, as Venezuela's neighbors in the world punish its government for repression. Venezuela's opposition must come up with a realistic platform for achieving political and economic change. For that to happen, Venezuela's often divided opposition needs to put forward a compelling vision. Chavismo's still considerable adherents will have to be removed, and the country reunited around shared concerns, whether reviving the oil industry or fighting organized crime. To truly succeed, protest marches have to lead someplace people really want to go, which is an interesting point, I suppose. But I go back to Paul Virilio, who says the revolutionary contingent attains its ideal form not in the place of production, but in the street. This is his book, Speed in Politics. The revolutionary contingent attains its ideal form not in the place of production, but in the street, where for a moment it stops being a cog in the technical machine, and itself becomes a motor machine of attack. In other words, a producer of speed. Julian Assange tweeted how Brazilians now see Donald Trump another sterling job from those who brought us Iraq, Al-Qaeda, Libya, Syria, ISIS, Iran, and Pinochet. I concluded by saying the irony. And take you back to my article from the 5th of December when I spoke about how we have a deviate tomahawk, and I said I have no doubt that Putin ran a seriously 21st century, predominantly digital program of interference in the US election, which amplified the Trump candidacy. POTUS Trump was an excellent and ideal candidate for this kind of support, from feeding the hothouse frenzy, conspiracy frenzy online, a constant state of destabilized perception, timely and judicious doses of WikiLeaks leaks which drained Hillary's bona fides, and her turnout and motivated Trump's. What we've witnessed, I said, was something remarkable and noteworthy. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar is on the up, 109.15 last. Dollar index firmly below 99 at 98.93 when I checked last. Japanese yen 111.33. Kuroda was speaking, but there was no translation. Swiss franc 0.9939. The pound, about which obviously I'm quite bullish, is back at 128.92. The Australian dollar, about which I'm bearish, 0.7480. India rupee, which has been on a great run, 64.15. South Korean won 11.2975. The Rial 317.25. Egyptian pound 18.1013. And the South African rand is around the 13.28 level, softening, and near-term target is 13.40 in my view. Let me put up a photograph of the Bank of Japan Governor Kuroda. It's Japanese yen. It's a very complicated scenario right now in terms of trading. I mean, he can't go on doing what he's been doing. Dollar index, I'll put up a 3-month chart. You can see we fell below that 99.50 level I kept on talking about, and now we're firmly below it. Euro dollar, November highs for the euro, now at 109.15. And if Draghi strikes a less dovish tone, it could really spike a lot higher as well, in my view. Standard Chartered reported good results, returned to its roots. The trade bank is bearing fruit. Shares jumped as much as 5%. First quarter results show the group is back on track with its recovery. The trends in transaction banking revenues and wealth management are encouraging. And Bill has been working on that turnaround. He's visited here twice. Very compelling fellow, actually. Taiwan has attracted the most equity inflows this year, and that's pushed the Taiwan dollar exchange rate to 30. This is from David Inglis Commodity Markets. Let's take a look. What's gold doing? 1264.20. I think it's a trading buy, but the market feels long, thinking that something was going to break real quick, and it hasn't. So everyone's feeling the pressure right now, I'm afraid, which is the way markets operate. Crude oil, my goodness, $49.20 in New York. 47 is an important level, and then I think we go to 40, and shale has OPEC over a barrel. We are in a bear market, you know that, because yesterday a report flashed across the screen. Saudi forces foil attempted attack on Aramco oil product center, and the price didn't move. A remote-controlled boat laden with explosives was spotted leaving a small island in Yemeni waters and later intercepted. The Mexican peso raised losses as it was said that President Trump won't immediately terminate NAFTA. And obviously they're trading very, very sensitive to any news on NAFTA at the moment. Angolan President Dos Santos has set August the 23rd for general elections, for which he's not standing. I've said previously, keep an eye on Caracas, Riyadh, Abuja, Luanda, and all the rest. Remarks by Nikki Haley: we must tell the South Sudan government we're not going to put up with this anymore. Marks, people believe, a serious escalation in US rhetoric. US has slammed South Sudan's Kiir over man-made famine and urges truce. The United States slammed South Sudan's President Salva Kiir on Tuesday for the African state's man-made famine and ongoing conflict, urging him to fulfill a month-old pledge of a unilateral truce by ordering his troops back to their barracks. We must see a sign that progress is possible. We must see that ceasefire implemented. The famine in South Sudan is man-made. It is the result of ongoing conflict in that country. It is the result of an apparent campaign against the civilian population. It is the result of killing humanitarian workers, Haley said. 10th of April I said, I remember the cries of South Sudan, oh yeah, as Juba got its independence. There was so much momentum, but look at what has happened. Everything became binary, Dinka versus Noya, and the economy has crashed and burned. The River Nile flows through Juba. It could have been the breadbasket of East Africa, but today a biblical famine stalks the land. And I said, why? Here the answer is politics. Burundi unrest leaves 720 people dead in 2 years, according to the country's state-run human rights agency. While as many as 60 people were being detained daily at the height of the crisis in 2015, the number has dropped between 10 and 15. The situation is that tension is coming down slowly. Ivory Coast is set to plan a $1 billion Eurobond by the end of July. They need the moolah, especially after the incredible collapse of cocoa prices that we've seen lately. It's going to sell at least $1 billion in Eurobonds by the end of July to raise funds for infrastructure projects. Country's first issuance of international debt since 2015, according to 2 people with knowledge of the plans. I'm sure there's concern about the military and cocoa prices, and Kevin Daly, a London-based money manager at Aberdeen Asset Management plc, who helps oversee $11 billion in assets, but I think they'll find a receptive audience if they provide some premium over the existing curve. Somewhere in the region of 50 basis points should suffice. South African oil shares up 5.98% year to date. Dollar versus rand, I think it's going back to 13.40. I'll put up a 1-month chart. It was a stunning snapback rally, but I don't think it was sustained on anything. Egyptian pound 18.1013. Nigerian oil shares up down 4.66% so far this year. Ghana's economy expanded at its slowest pace in 26 years in 2016. Shutdown of oil and gas fields weighed on output. GDP grew at 3.5% from 3.9% in 2015. Oil and gas sector contracted 16.9% in 2016. Agriculture expanded to 3% and manufacturing grew 2.7%. Ghana Stock Exchange, about which I've been bullish since the start of the year, is up 11.95% this year. Saharana Hotels has reported full-year earnings. Profit before tax surged to 254%. Full-year revenues were up 4.5% at 6.46 billion. Full-year earnings before exchange loss, interest, depreciation, taxation was up 78.35%, so that was good. Net interest expense was down. Full-year profit before tax up 254.2%. Profit after tax went from a previous loss of 280.571 million to a profit of 129.328 million. Earnings per share was positive 54 cents versus a previous negative 1 shilling and 63, and they're paying a full-year dividend of 35 cents a share, which will go down well. They said tourism sector in East Africa witnessed a slow but positive turnaround during the second half of 2016. Traditional and new international source markets performed slightly better than 2015. Increased activity within the East African corporate sector and domestic leisure market segment. So that was another positive. But they're experiencing a margin squeeze resulting from overdevelopment around their units. I think it's going to rebound further. I expect a rebound to gather strength, but the election is a politically possible curveball in full year 17. This is the most optimistic they've been in their commentary for eternity. I think it's a buy at 23.50. Then they put up a photograph of Nishat and Hannah riding along the lake shore at Lake El Monteito, which is one of their best properties. This is the Polana in Maputo. And of course, my favorite is from my youth. We used to go here a lot, Saharana Hotels Mombasa, and you can see the Indian Ocean in the background. I did an interview a while back with Mahmood Jan Mohammed, who's been the MD of Saharana for a long, long time. Very effective one too. Have a look at that interview if you've got a time. Kenya shilling 103.26 last. Nairobi all shared minus 0.16% this year. NSE 20 minus 0.75% this year. Both are headed back into positive territory imminently. Once again, thank you for stopping by.